They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Nobody
Who
wants
a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? The outrage.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Joe Rogan and Bill Maher rarely see eye to eye on much, but when it comes to Rachel Zegler's so-called woke Snow White remake, they have one message in common. This might be one of Disney's biggest flops yet. The first red flags popped up when word spread that Disney wanted to shift Snow White's narrative away from romance. Reportedly, they wanted a more empowered princess who didn't need a prince at all. On paper, that might sound harmless. Yet in practice, it meant ignoring the core elements of a classic: the dwarfs, the romance, the enchanting innocence. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story, with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. Oh my god. Suddenly people who had planned to buy tickets started questioning whether Zegler even liked the story she'd been hired to portray. Then it went a step further. Old social media posts revealed she blasted an entire political group by telling anyone who supported President Trump to go away and never know peace. So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump. But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed, like you are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler, of what the map looks like, just so you can understand when your Disney movie is coming out, how many people you are wishing harm upon. Like this is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah. Totally stable thing for her to be posting. Wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace. President Rachel Zegler also posted, FT Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also said that she hoped the Trump supporters, quote, never know peace. And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because it's their star Rachel Zegler was so unlikable. Told all Trump supporters that they could excuse me, but she did. That was just November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one. Some of these attacks were unsubtle. She literally said "Far Donald Trump" and cursed out his voters. Even viewers who weren't Trump supporters found it extreme. After all, when you're the star of a Disney movie aimed at families that cross political lines, openly deriding half the country can backfire big time. A storm of criticism erupted. And then she came out and she said, "I apologize. Like I went too far, but it wasn't sincere." Was Zegler just being outspoken, or was she alienating millions of ticket buyers? So how did Joe Rogan and Bill Maher weigh in? Rogan, known for his freewheeling podcast where no topic is off limits, tore into what he sees as a growing trend in Hollywood, sacrificing story and tradition for the sake of being woke. On a recent episode, he slammed the Snow White remake as evidence that studios fear backlash more than they want to entertain. The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb. The movie has a major identity crisis. This is just so typical of the left, the progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely atrocious. Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative. I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful. They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo. It's, awful. Generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphorical level? Meanwhile, Bill Maher, famed for his commentary that often pokes holes in political correctness, took aim at the sheer irony of labeling the prince a stalker and removing dwarfs in the name of progress. For Maher, it was a classic example of woke culture overcorrecting and ending up being unintentionally offensive, especially to little person actors who lost out on iconic roles. These big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after? No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword. Then there was the subplot, or more accurately, the removal of any subplot involving romance. The original Snow White revolves around the idea of love triumphing over evil. Zegler proudly announced she had no interest in a story about a woman dreaming of a prince. So no prince, or a different kind of prince. I'm sure a lot of people will assume it's a love story. Just because like we cast a guy in the movie Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows, it's Hollywood, baby. Both Rogan and Maher hammered home the same point. By focusing so heavily on virtue signaling, Disney missed the obvious truth that audiences go to the movies to be entertained, not lectured. They suggested that Zegler's personal attacks on a large swath of the population only poured gasoline on the fire. If the star herself seemed hostile toward potential viewers, why would those viewers pay to see her on the big screen? Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film, but rather she deserves to be in a padded cell. Even aside from Zegler's attitude, the production decisions themselves felt like the perfect storm for disaster. The seven dwarfs are not mere side characters. They're the heart of the original Snow White, each with distinct personalities. Did the dwarfs make it or no? Well, the CGI dwarfs did. And of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, "Why are we doing that? We've hired a Latina actress to be Snow White. That's progressive, but you're going to hire little people to play the dwarfs? That just seems like a step backwards." And then of course Disney instantly buckled and said, "Okay, we're going to add magical creatures." Then they got even crazier and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough. Okay. Rather than refine the dwarfs with updated nuances, Disney decided to remove them outright or replace them with CGI magical creatures. When leaks hit the internet, fans saw bizarre images of these so-called creatures, some tall, some short, a medley of random designs. And then they couldn't put dwarfs, finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs. And dwarfs want to work. That many scripts that come down the pike? No. There's 7 of them that has, and there's 7 dwarf jobs here. But because I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is not right. Many exclaimed they looked like cheap placeholders from a forgettable fantasy flick, completely missing the distinct personalities that made the dwarfs so lovable. Little person actors were furious, pointing out that each dwarf would have been a major role they rarely get the chance to land. You're replacing jobs that people could have as little people. Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, it's for dwarfs. These are roles made for actors of my stature. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles because that's not for me. And now it's taken away. I don't feel that's right. The 7 dwarfs of Snow White have of course all just disappeared, and now they're the 7 dysfunctional men. They couldn't have dwarves. Do you guys remember your Dinklage and all them were talking crap? So originally you have a picture of what the dwarves were supposed to look like? I can find it. But it was an array. It was the DI of dwarves. Dwarves. Yep. They had to reshoot the film and use CGI dwarves. There you go. So those guys didn't make it. That guy's 6 feet 2 inches. And they were like, what? We just want to work. Awkward dwarves. So ho ho ho. I guess what are we going to have? Like a lesbian, a trans person, someone in a wheelchair, someone of color? Like I don't understand. Why weren't the dwarfs enough? But apparently they were too offensive because the most famous dwarf of all, Peter Dinklage, said something negative about it back in 2022, thus ruining the biggest acting roles the dwarfs had ever seen since the creation of Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompa back in the 1970s. Within days of release, headlines were calling it a certified bomb. The film reportedly cost over $200 million. Factoring in marketing, Disney had expected at least $150 million opening weekend. Instead, it struggled to muster $43 million. That's a calamitous shortfall, especially for a legacy remake that should have been a sure thing. Some who ventured to theaters walked out, complaining it felt antagonistic toward fans of the original. Doll lines and themed merchandise sat unopened on store shelves. Clear signs that families were steering clear. The message from the public was unanimous: you can't stomp on tradition, insult half your audience, and expect box office gold. Who the hell are you to say Olive Andrews could get cut? Like, who are you? Are you Disney? I've read your book and it's a phenomenal book. You're losing a generation of loyal viewers. When you think about Snow White, what is the premise? What is the story? It's a love story. It's a dream for a girl to grow up and a man falls in love. I'm really upset that the biggest theme here is that it's anti-men and she called him a stalker. As the returns trickled in, whispers emerged of internal turmoil at Disney. Insiders claim that executives were blindsided by how deeply unpopular Zegler's political comments were. Others said the creative team had tried to pivot mid-production, hence the reshoots rumored to cost millions more. They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now and how they had her tweet out like a little "Yay Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, "Good job, Rachel." And then she like minutes later followed it up with, "And never forget Free Palestine." And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue on Snow White. Yet every interview from Zegler that surfaced only further inflamed tensions. She told the press she was proud of ditching any notion of a prince and insisted that the film was more relevant than ever. Critics joked that she was wagging her finger at the audience, scolding them for enjoying the old version. Executives scrambled for possible solutions. Should they quietly let Snow White fizzle out in theaters and hope for better results on streaming? Could they salvage the franchise with a sequel that backtracks on the changes? For now, everything looks shaky, and Disney's once unshakable brand loyalty seems to be on the line. Rachel Zegler just faced the ultimate Hollywood horror, sitting in a near-empty theater watching her own movie flop in real time. And not even Discount Tuesday could save it. The woke Snow White remake didn't just bomb, it vanished into oblivion, leaving Zegler and a few ride-or-die friends as some of the only souls brave enough to witness the wreckage firsthand. For an actress once hailed as Hollywood's next big thing, this was a brutal reality check. Now the box office numbers are calling back, and the message is clear: no one showed up. On March 25, 2025, Rachel Zegler pulled together a few loyal friends, Isla Mason, Jorge Mason, Remy, and Maria Isabel Demison, for what should have been a proud moment, watching her movie on the big screen. But when they walked into the theater, it looked more like a ghost town than a movie premiere. There were almost no other people around. Still, her friend tried to hype the moment. As Rachel's name popped up on the screen, Ilda yelled out Zegler, with full excitement. Rachel. She gave a little awkward cheer and laughed like she was trying to pretend everything was fine. Now no one knows if they actually rented the theater or if it was just naturally that empty. Either way, the silence was louder than any applause. Trying to make the best of it, they jumped on a viral trend. They walked up to a Regal employee and this happened, please, oh, for which movie? It was painfully awkward, like a birthday party no one showed up to. Even the Snow White popcorn bucket looked embarrassed. If you listen to people like Joe Rogan, Bill Maher, or other cultural commentators, this fiasco is the canary in the coal mine for Hollywood. They argue that studios are so focused on avoiding controversy that they overcorrect and ironically cause even bigger backlash. Meanwhile, big-name directors and producers are watching Snow White bomb, worried about the future of similar modernized remakes. Rumors suggest some major layoffs might follow at Disney. The cost of multiple flops like Lightyear, Strange World, and now Snow White has battered Disney's bottom line. Investors are likely furious that a surefire classic could collapse so spectacularly. And then there's Rachel Zegler herself. She went from being an exciting newcomer to a figure with a reputation for divisiveness. Casting directors have begun to whisper, is she worth the risk? The skill is there, but so is the baggage. Ultimately, this fiasco might force Disney to rethink its approach. The pattern of relying on classic remakes while injecting them with heavy-handed political messaging can only work for so long if fans keep rejecting the final product. With box office receipts acting as the final verdict, Disney may have no choice but to pivot back to what made them great in the first place, heartfelt stories that unite audiences, not push them away. So was this Snow White remake doomed from the start, or could a different approach have saved it? One side believes it never stood a chance once Disney decided to tear out the core plot in favor of vague modern themes. Another side points the finger at Rachel Zegler's combative persona, claiming her social media outbursts alienated viewers long before the first trailer dropped. Either way, the result is the same. The film tanked, and it's become a magnet for criticism. Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, two voices that rarely overlap, both singled out the fiasco as proof that Hollywood's woke overreach can destroy even the most beloved stories. Instead of a triumphant modernization, we got a hollow shell where dwarfs were replaced, romance was mocked, and entire demographics were told to stay away. Moving forward, Disney might need to reevaluate its entire live-action strategy. Fans still love the magic of old-school fairy tales. They're often open to updates, but not if those updates come across as dismissive or condescending. If the studio wants to keep building on its legacy, it must remember what made these stories resonate across generations. And as for Rachel Zegler, only time will tell if she can rebound from this or if she'll be remembered as the actress who launched one of Disney's largest big-screen flops by alienating fans. It might take a new project and a careful approach to public relations to prove that she can still be a box office draw. But for now, Snow White stands as a cautionary tale in the entertainment industry. Disrespecting your core audience is the quickest route to an empty theater. No matter how beloved the source material might be, in the end, the real moral of the story isn't about dwarfs or princesses. It's about what happens when arrogance, political posturing, and creative confusion combine to sink one of Disney's oldest and most treasured fairy tales. So what do you think? Could Disney have turned this around by showing more respect for the original story, or was the combination of heavy-handed messaging and a polarizing star an inevitable recipe for disaster? Let me know your thoughts and brace yourselves for the next big remake Disney attempts. If Snow White is any indication, we might all want to keep our expectations in.